The price of silence. Armin sat on the edge of his worn-out charpoy, staring at the fading cracks in the mud-plastered wall of his one-room house. The evening sun leaked through the half-broken window, casting shadows that reminded him of the emptiness that had long settled in his heart. He was only 36, yet life had carved deep lines into his face, and his eyes carried the heaviness of a man twice his age. The villagers whispered his name with pity and disdain. The widower who couldn't keep his wife faithful. They never said it to his face, but their glances and hushed voices told the story every time he walked past them. His late wife, Nyla, had left scars deeper than her sudden death. Her infidelity had been an open secret, one that haunted him long after she was buried. Love had betrayed him once, and trust had become a foreign word. But hunger and survival did not wait for grief. His fields were barren, his debts growing, and loneliness gnawed at him each night. He had no children, no family, no companionship. Only the echo of betrayal remained, dragging him down like an anchor in deep water. It was during one such desperate evening that Stepmom appeared, a woman infamous for her cunning. She was draped in a gaudy red shawl, her sharp eyes glinting with mischief. She was the stepmother of 2 orphaned sisters, and everyone in the village knew she treated them like burdens rather than daughters. "Armin," she said sweetly, though her voice carried the venom of greed. "You need help in your house, someone to cook, clean, and keep you company. I have just the solution." He frowned. "At what price, Stepmom?" Her lips curled into a sly smile. "2 girls. Twins. Beautiful, obedient. They'll serve you well. For a fair amount, they can be yours." The words struck him like stones. Yours. As though people could be bought like livestock. He wanted to turn her away, to slam the door on her vile proposal. But the thought of living and dying alone, trapped in his misery, tugged at him. His conscience wrestled with his desperation. By nightfall, the deal was made. 2 frightened figures followed Stepmom into his yard the next morning. They were thin, their clothes plain and worn, their heads lowered as though the ground itself was safer to look at than the eyes of men. "This is Aliyah," Stepmom announced, shoving forward the quieter of the 2. Aliyah's large, downcast eyes carried a softness that spoke of endurance, the kind born from silent suffering. "And this is Myra," she added, pulling the second girl by the arm. Myra's gaze, in contrast, was sharp and defiant, her chin tilted upward even in fear. Armin studied them with a heavy heart. He had not married them. He had purchased their freedom from a woman who saw them as burdens. Yet, the shame of such a transaction weighed on him as if he had chained them himself. Stepmom counted the money, her greedy fingers trembling with eagerness. "They're yours now. Do as you please." With that, she left, her figure swallowed by the dusty road, leaving silence in her wake. For a long while, none of them spoke. The air felt thick with unspoken fears. The twins stood side by side, their hands clasped tightly together, as if drawing courage from each other. Armin cleared his throat, his voice hoarse. "You're safe here," he said simply. The words felt weak, almost hollow, but it was all he could offer. Aliyah lowered her eyes further, whispering a soft G. Myra, however, did not answer. Her gaze remained fixed on him, as though testing whether this man was any different from the stepmother who had sold them. The house felt different with their presence. The silence was no longer empty but watchful, filled with cautious breaths and careful footsteps. Armin felt the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. He had not only taken in 2 strangers, but also inherited their pain, their fears, their fragile hopes. That night, as the moonlight streamed through the broken window, Armin lay awake, haunted by the decision he had made. He told himself he had done it out of necessity. Yet deep within, he wondered if fate had forced him into a path he could neither control nor escape. The central truth lingered. He was a man betrayed by love, living with scars of infidelity, now bound to 2 women who had been betrayed by family. Their fates, though different, had been tied together by the cruelty of others. Armin closed his eyes, unaware that this reluctant act of desperation would soon unravel secrets, ignite conflicts, and awaken emotions he had long buried. He did not yet know that he had become the unwilling savior of the very souls he thought he had only purchased. Walls within walls. Morning light crept across the village, spilling golden rays over Armin's courtyard. For years, his home had woken to silence broken only by the crowing of roosters. Now, faint sounds stirred inside, soft footsteps, the clinking of utensils, and whispers exchanged between the sisters. The presence of Aliyah and Myra filled the air with a cautious life he had forgotten existed. Armin stepped out, adjusting his worn shawl around his shoulders. He found Aliyah kneeling by the hearth, coaxing a small flame to catch beneath a pile of firewood. Her movements were delicate, careful, as if afraid a single mistake would summon punishment. The scent of boiling tea drifted in the cool air, mixing with the earthy smell of morning. "You didn't have to start so early," Armin said quietly. Aliyah looked up, startled, her dark eyes lowering almost immediately. "It is better to be useful," she murmured, her voice soft as silk. Myra entered then, carrying a clay pot of water balanced firmly on her hip. Unlike her sister, she met Armin's gaze directly, her expression a mask of defiance. "We didn't come here to sit idle," she said, her tone edged with challenge. Armin studied her, recognizing the wall she had built around herself. He did not argue. Their lives had already been stripped of choice. Perhaps defiance was the only way Myra preserved her dignity. As the day unfolded, the differences between the sisters became clearer. Aliyah worked silently, tidying corners of the house, folding clothes, sweeping the uneven floor. Her every gesture carried the weight of obedience learned from years of oppression. Myra, on the other hand, questioned everything: why the roof still leaked, why Armin ate so little, why the fields remained barren. Her words cut sharp, but beneath the thorns was a fire that refused to be extinguished. That evening, as they shared a modest meal of lentils and flatbread, the silence between them grew heavy. Aliyah ate with downcast eyes, her movements graceful but restrained. Myra tore her bread with force, the crunch echoing louder than intended. Finally, she spoke. "Why us?" she asked, her voice steady. Armin looked up from his plate. "What do you mean? Why did you buy us?" she pressed. "Was it pity? Was it loneliness? Or just convenience?" Aliyah flinched at her sister's bluntness, her hand tightening around her cup. Armin set his food aside, the question striking deeper than he wished to admit. "I bought nothing," he said, his voice low but firm. "I freed you from her grasp. Your stepmother would have sold you to someone else, perhaps someone cruel. I only want to help in this empty house. Nothing more." Myra's eyes narrowed. "Freedom is not bought. It is given. Remember that." She rose abruptly and walked outside, leaving Aliyah to whisper apologies on her behalf. When night settled, Armin remained awake, listening to the faint murmur of the sisters speaking in the next room. Their voices carried fragments of pain, memories of hunger, and the shadow of their stepmother's cruelty. He realized then that his house had gained more than company. It had inherited wounds as deep as his own. Days passed, and with each one, unspoken patterns emerged. Aliyah, with her gentle nature, gravitated toward Armin's silence, filling it with quiet acts of kindness. She repaired his torn kurta, arranged his books neatly, and left warm tea waiting after his labor in the fields. Though she seldom spoke, her presence softened the edges of his loneliness. Myra remained a storm, restless and unyielding. She challenged his every decision, accusing him of pitying them, questioning whether he truly saw them as human or merely as responsibility. Yet in her fiery words, Armin glimpsed strength, an unwillingness to surrender to the cruelty of fate. One evening, as the sky blushed with streaks of crimson, Armin found himself telling Aliyah about his past. The words spilled uninvited, heavy and bitter. "My wife," he said slowly, "was not loyal. She shared herself with another man while I broke my back in the fields. When she died, the village pitied me, but their pity was sharper than scorn. They said I was not man enough to hold her love." Aliyah's eyes softened, a sadness glistening within them. You suffered betrayal, just as we suffered abandonment, she whispered. Perhaps fate has tied our sorrows together so that they may heal. For the first time in years, Armin felt seen, not as the widower mocked by whispers, but as a man wounded by love's cruelty. Yet just as a fragile bond began to form, Myra's voice pierced the moment from the doorway. Do not mistake comfort for trust, she warned coldly. Wounds may heal, but scars remain. Her words echoed like a blade in the stillness. The fragile thread connecting them trembled, threatening to snap. Armin said nothing, but deep within, he understood. Trust was not given freely. It had to be earned, carved slowly through patience, endurance, and perhaps love. The night grew darker, the silence thicker. 3 broken souls, bound together by circumstance, sat beneath the same roof, each guarding their pain like a hidden flame. None could see it yet, but their paths had begun to entwine in ways that would test the very walls they had built within themselves. The shadows we carry. The days shortened as autumn crept into the village, and with it came a brutal chill that clung to the air. Armin's house, once hollow with silence, now breathed with the rhythm of 3 lives attempting to coexist. Yet beneath the surface of daily chores and quiet meals, a storm of unspoken truths simmered. Armin found himself watching the sisters more than he wished to admit. Aliyah's gentle movements carried a calmness that softened his solitude. When she lit the evening lamp, her face glowed with a warmth that made the mud walls appear less broken. Myra, on the other hand, remained restless, her defiance sparking like flint against the silence. She tested his patience, challenged his decisions, and yet, in her fire, he sensed the same stubborn will that had kept him alive after betrayal. One evening, as he mended a cracked wooden chair, Myra's voice cut through the stillness. You think kindness will erase what has been done to us? She asked sharply. Armin set his tools aside. I don't pretend to erase anything. I only try to build something new. Her eyes narrowed, flickering with mistrust. Build? With what? With pity? Or with guilt? Before Armin could reply, Aliyah stepped forward, placing a hand on her sister's arm. Myra, not every gesture carries hidden chains. Sometimes care is simply care. Myra pulled away, her jaw tight. That's what they said before she sold us. She left the room, her footsteps echoing in defiance. Silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Armin sighed, rubbing his temples. She hates me. Aliyah shook her head gently. She hates what was done to us. It will take time for her to see you are not the same. For a moment, their eyes met, and Armin felt the fragile thread of trust tightening between them. But trust was a dangerous gift, one he had once lost at a devastating cost. That night, sleep refused to come. Memories of Nyla, his late wife, haunted him. He saw her laughter, the way she had once looked at him with affection, only for it to curdle into deceit. He heard again the whispers of villagers, mocking him as a man betrayed. The scars of infidelity pulsed like fresh wounds in the dark. Unable to bear it, he stepped outside. The moon hung low, casting silver light across the yard. To his surprise, Aliyah was already there, seated quietly by the well. You cannot sleep either, she asked, her voice soft, carrying both weariness and care. He nodded. Memories are cruel companions. She folded her hands in her lap. We all carry shadows. Myra clings to hers fiercely, but mine weigh me down silently. Shabnam told us we were worthless, fit only to be sold. For years, I believed her. Armin's chest tightened. You are not worthless. You deserve better than the cruelty you endured. Her eyes shimmered in the moonlight, and for the first time, a faint smile curved her lips. And you? Do you believe you deserve better than betrayal? The question struck him with unexpected force. He swallowed hard, struggling for words. I don't know. Some days I think I was a fool, unworthy of loyalty. Other days, I blame her. But always, I blame myself for not seeing it sooner. Aliyah reached out, her fingers brushing his hand lightly, a touch that lingered longer than chance. Pain is not weakness, Armin. It is proof that you still feel, still hope. That makes you stronger than you believe. Her words pierced through years of self-doubt, carving a fragile space where healing could begin. For a fleeting moment, he allowed himself to imagine that trust might be possible again. But from the shadows of the doorway, unseen by them, Myra watched. Her eyes burned not with hatred, but with something sharper, jealousy mixed with fear. She turned away, her heart a storm she could neither name nor quiet. The following day, tension thickened. Myra's tone grew sharper, her words more barbed. She mocked Aliya's gentleness, accused her of bowing too easily. Armin recognized the signs of conflict blooming between the sisters, their shared wounds threatening to divide them. By evening, the storm broke. "You trust him too quickly," Myra shouted at Aliya, her face flushed with anger. "Have you forgotten what men are capable of? Have you forgotten how easily they break promises?" Aliya's voice trembled, but did not falter. "Not all men are the same, Myra. Some carry scars as we do. Some deserve a chance to heal, too." Their arguments silenced the house, leaving Armin caught in the middle of their fractured loyalties. He realized then that the battle he faced was not only against his own past, but against the distrust that shackled them all. As night fell, he sat alone in the courtyard, the sisters retreating to their room in cold silence. He stared at the dark sky, his heart heavy with the weight of choices yet to come. 3 broken souls, bound by pain, stood on the edge of something neither could define: love, trust, or ruin. Whatever it was, it demanded courage none of them were sure they possessed. And though he could not name it yet, Armin felt it. The storm had only begun. A savior's choice. The sharp cry of a rooster broke the stillness of dawn, but Armin's house was already awake. Tension had turned rest into a fragile thing, and silence into a battlefield. The previous night's quarrel between Aliya and Myra still lingered like smoke after a fire, and each glance between the sisters carried words unspoken. Armin busied himself in the courtyard, chopping wood with more force than necessary. The rhythm steadied his hands but did little to quiet his thoughts. He feared that if mistrust grew any further between the sisters, the fragile balance they had found together would shatter completely. His fears proved justified when Stepmom returned. She arrived in the afternoon, her shadow falling across the threshold like a curse. Draped in her gaudy shawl, she smiled with the venom of a snake. "Armin," she called sweetly, "I've come to see how my girls fare." The twins froze at the sound of her voice. Aliya instinctively stepped back, while Myra's fists clenched at her sides. Armin's chest tightened. He had expected her greed, but not so soon. "What do you want, Stepmom?" he asked, his voice firm. Her eyes glittered. "More money. You think what you paid was enough for 2 young brides? Times are hard, and I have expenses. Pay me again, or I'll take the back. Others are willing to pay more." The words cut through the air, cruel and sharp. Aliya's face drained of color, her body trembling at the thought of returning to that prison. Myra, however, stepped forward, her voice ringing with fury. "You will not take us anywhere," she declared. "We are not cattle to be sold at your whim." Stepmom sneered. "And were you now? Living under a widower's roof, bound by his charity? Don't fool yourself, child. You still belong to me." Before Myra could lunge at her, Armin placed himself between them. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of choice. He could no longer remain silent. "They are not yours, Stepmom," he said, his voice steady. "They are not mine either. They belong to themselves. You lost the right to call them daughters the moment you sold them." A murmur rose among the gathering villagers who had begun to watch from a distance, drawn by the confrontation. Their eyes carried judgment, curiosity, and the ever-present hunger for gossip. Stepmom's smile twisted into a snarl. "You think the village will stand with you, Armin? They remember your shame. They whisper still of the wife who betrayed you. You were not enough for her, and now you pretend to be savior of these girls? Who will believe you?" The words pierced deep, reopening old wounds, but Armin did not flinch. For years he had bowed beneath whispers and pity, but now, with Aliya and Myra trembling behind him, He felt strength rise where shame once lived. "I am not here to prove myself to the village," he said. "I am here to protect them. I will not let betrayal define me again, nor will I let cruelty chain them further." The crowd shifted, murmuring. Some frowned, others nodded, but none stepped forward to side with Stepmom. Aliyah gathered her courage and spoke, her voice shaking yet clear. "Armin gave us shelter when no one else would. He never raised his hand, never treated us as less than human. If that is shame, then let me carry it proudly." Myra's eyes burned with fire, but this time it was not defiance against Armin. It was solidarity. "You will not touch us again, Stepmom. If you try, you will find you have lost more than daughters. You will have lost every last shred of power you once held." Stepmom's face twisted, her control unraveling under their united defiance. She spat at the ground, muttered curses, and stormed away, her shawl flapping like torn wings. When the villagers dispersed, silence settled once more, but it was a different silence. Lighter, stronger, unchained. Armin turned to the sisters, his heart pounding. "I have nothing to give but honesty," he said. "I am no hero. I am a man scarred by betrayal, uncertain of tomorrow. But if you choose to stay, then we will build something together, something not bound by purchase but by choice." Aliyah's eyes glistened with tears, her soft smile carrying the promise of trust slowly mending. Myra, though still fierce, nodded once, her gaze steady. "Then prove it, Armin. Prove that trust can live again." The weight of the past did not vanish, but it shifted, transformed into a burden they would carry together. Betrayal had bound them once, but now it was hope that tied their fates. As the evening sun dipped low, painting the sky with hues of crimson and gold, Armin realized he was no longer just a widower haunted by infidelity, nor were Aliyah and Myra merely sisters sold by cruelty. Together, they had become survivors, each scarred, yet each willing to believe that redemption could be born even from ruin. And though their journey was far from over, one truth shone clear. Salvation was not found in forgetting the past, but in choosing to rise beyond it.